Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning, wherever you are. Thank you very much for joining the Boredom Club today to our innovation conference featuring executives from top tech companies across AI, analytics, cyber, fintech, quantum computing, and CRM. My name is Yossi Garmazi, second year MBA here at Cornell, and I'm joined here also by a classmate and a good friend of mine, Alvaro Jimenez. Alvaro?
Happy to be here, Yossi.
So today we are fortunate enough to interview none other than Aria Finger, Chief of Staff of Reid Hoffman, the legendary founder of LinkedIn, and one of the most prominent investors out there. Aria is also hosting a podcast with Reid called Possible, where they talk all about the hottest tech trends out there. And I can tell you it's a great podcast. I listen to it. Aria's journey is incredible. She joined the social organization DoSomething.org at only entry-level associate and did all the way up to lead the organization to new heights. For example, surpassing 5 million members, representing 131 countries from all over the world. And one of their coolest initiatives was providing over 5 million pairs of jeans for homeless youth. Besides that, she's also started a consulting firm and the business development arm that work with over 25% of Fortune 100. But we will get to it later on. So, Aria, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, and so I usually we begin by asking our speakers what led them to the tech world, but in your case, it's quite different. You took your skills to social impact work, but what led you to focus in this area, especially when it's clearly not the most lucrative one from a financial standpoint?
No, if I was looking to maximize my salary, I definitely chose the wrong entry-level job right out of school. But I will disagree with you a little bit because DoSomething was a tech organization. I mean, a third of the people who worked at DoSomething were engineers and data scientists. Reid Hoffman was on our board, Raj Kapoor from Lyft. We had funding from from Jeff Lawson, from Twilio. We had it was a tech organization through and through, and we wouldn't have been able to make the social change that we wanted to without that underpinning of technology. And so what led me to it was I was always someone who wanted to make a difference in the world. I was sort of inculcated with that idea from a young age. And yet I didn't have sort of one thing like, oh, education or cancer and the idea of do something besides the fact that it's like the best name for an organization possible.
Right.
I loved the idea that I could do something about so many things, but also do so in a manner that was efficient, effective. We were market driven. We didn't ask people for donations really. We actually were driven by business development and working with Fortune 500 companies. So it checked a lot of those boxes, technology, corporate sector, but also making sure to make an impact.
Amazing. But can you share with us maybe a little bit about your childhood and specifically how did your parents influence your value and your early career decisions?
I'd say that making money was never brought up in our household, truly. I mean, I grew up a very middle class childhood. My mom was a piano teacher. My dad worked in nonprofits his whole life, often in education. And certainly something that was critically important was the idea that, you've been given so much, you should give back. Like I remember I was an econ major in college and I called my dad and I was like, "Ugh, I'm studying for, this macro test." And he was like, "Oh, I'm protesting the Rockefeller drug laws." And, at the high school that he worked at, he hired formerly homeless people to become custodians and janitors. It was always sort of like they walked the walk of social justice. And that was something that I heard about in my household growing up. And so it was sort of a no-brainer that I, went into that industry.
Absolutely. And moving on now to DoSomething.org. So you joined DoSomething and worked all your way up over 15 years period, eventually leading the organization, right? But what were some of the biggest challenges you faced while leading such a mission-driven nonprofit?
I mean, our challenges were honestly the same challenges as any tech startup. So some of the challenges were of scale. We texted 3 million young people every Tuesday, and you don't think of text messages as expensive, but they were one of our biggest line item expenses because we were spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on spending those text messages to young people. So we actually worked with Twilio to see like, hey, can we get a deal? Can we negotiate this? What can we do? When GDPR went into effect, it was like, oh my God, we're going to have to put the entire product pipeline on hold and make sure that we have regulatory compliance. So I'd say a lot of the challenges were the same challenges that any tech company faces. Oh, we have a leaky funnel. People are signing up, but then they're not completing the campaigns. Like, how do we get more young people to know about us? Sort of all of those things. And then you add on top of it that we're a not-for-profit. But I actually think that, the saying goes, creativity loves constraints. And I think sort of the constraint of having potentially less resources, we didn't, raise a $50 million Series B. We had to be super creative in everything we're doing. So I actually think that led to some of our, biggest breakthroughs, most exciting campaigns, that sort of thing.
And as you mentioned, you scaled rapidly. How did you manage to grow the organization so rapidly while still being creative and finding new way to tackle emergent social issues?
I think one of the things is we really understood young people. And one of the reasons why, of course, you can survey them, but we actually saw what they were doing. So people would survey young people and say, "Oh, what are the causes you care about most?" And people would say the troops. So I really care about, the US military. That's common patriotism. But then we'd look at our website and we'd looked at the drop-down menu and we'd see no one picks the troop, but a third of all young people pick animal welfare. So we have actually this data that's implicit data that no one else has. And so we can actually categorize what we're doing for young people. Like another thing is, we saw that when we had, and this is sort of terrible, when you had pictures of only women in the campaigns, you wouldn't get any guys signing up for it. So we
Oh,
launched
really?
an effort called Dude Something. And what it was we tried to get more guys involved in Do Something. And we looked at all the different ways that if you do this, oh, guys won't sign up. If you do this, guys won't sign up. So again, we relied on the data that we had to sort of super serve these young people. And one of our biggest insights was actually that young people, their biggest worry is actually not getting into college, it's paying for college. And so we offered millions of dollars of scholarship money to these young people because they were getting into colleges, but they couldn't afford it. And so then Do Something became a destination for them to find money for college.
And Do Something is brilliant name. And I have actually maybe the toughest question to ask you, but I will just ask it. If you need to choose one, what was the proudest moment of your time at Do Something?
So I'll give you two, which I know is unfair. There's so many, truly. But one was, this was like 15 years ago. So it was a different media landscape. And we landed a prime time special called the Do Something Awards. It was on VH1. And when I say it was star-studded, I mean Bruno Mars performed and the band Fun and Dashboard Confessional and Will Ferrell was there and Justin Bieber and Kim Kardashian and Ben Affleck. I mean, I could go on and on. And so celebrities don't matter except for validation. That was the way that we said, like, we are on the map. We are an organization that matters. And so it was just really fun that our like little tiny organization turned into this primetime special that showed young people that social change is just as important as the Oscars, is just as important. You want to win a Grammy? No, you want to win a Do Something award. And so that was amazing for validation. But I would say truly the proudest moment was a campaign that I created called Teens for Jeans. And in our sort of along the way, what we did was we collected jeans for homeless kids. Because what a lot of people don't know is that a third of all homeless people in the United States are under the age of 18. So a third of all homeless people are children. And they need a pair of jeans because they want to be just like everybody else. They want to go to school, they want to fit in. And we partnered with over 1,000 homeless shelters across the country to collect jeans for these homeless kids. And I think it was our third year of the campaign, we collected over 1 million pairs of jeans. And so we clothed a third of all homeless kids in the country. And the idea that a little act could make a massive difference was just sort of another validation that like every little thing matters. You might not be able to sort of change the world, but you can change the world for someone. You can change your local community, which I think is really critical.
Yeah, and I can tell you the Teens for Jeans is amazing, super inspirational. When I read about it on your website, so good job. And
Thank
Do
you.
Something is also a member all over the world. Was there any particular maybe region where you faced unique challenges, perhaps due to local reservation or government regulation? And how did you address these difficulties?
So, I mean, I'd say every place around the world. Like, we had to do something outpost in the Democratic Republic of Congo. So, like, you can't even imagine the difficult issues that people are facing. We had an outpost in Nigeria. Their corruption was one of the number one problems. It wasn't something we were addressing. I remember in particular, we were lucky enough to meet actually with former president of Mexico, Vicente Fox. He came to our office and we were telling him about Teens for Genes. And we were like, would that work in Mexico? And he was like, what are you talking about? Homeless people? Homeless people don't exist in the same way in Mexico. And we were like, what? We had no idea. But he told us what a really big issue was young people that he called ninis, ni educación, ni trabajo. Young people who aren't in school and also don't have a job. Sort of young people who are you're worried that they're going to get lost. They're sort of getting lost, that they're not in school, they don't have a job, or it's become a lost generation. And so by talking to people on the ground in those places, we discovered that we need totally different campaigns to fit the local aspect. And that, of course, is one of the, super hard problems about scaling globally.
Yeah, incredible. And Aria, if you could choose one thing in the world that you wish to change, what would it be?
Oh my gosh, one thing in the world?
Yeah.
I mean, that's really hard. Like truly the most like basic boring answer is world hunger because I can't, even imagine. It's like there's so much potential in all aspects of the globe, but as they say, opportunity is not equally distributed, even though intelligence is. And so the idea that we could get food, healthcare, and education to everyone to an equal standard. And again, that's at least part of that is some of the hopes of AI, which I know we're going to talk about later. But certainly that's what I would change. You don't want to cut off people's chance at an amazing life before it even starts.
Yeah, agree. And I can't wait actually to see how the AI development maybe could change the path of this specific problem in the world. Maybe it could do
Sure.
the change. And I actually have a follow-up question about the Teens for Genes
Hmm.
campaign. I mean, it's provided over 5 million pairs of jeans to homeless youth, and it's amazing. But if you can touch maybe a little bit about how the campaign started and what inspired that initiative at the first place.
Well, what started it was we actually called homeless shelters and we said, like, what do young people want and need? And they were the ones who told us blue jeans. And so we were like, okay. And then it sort of seems obvious to do like, oh, just do a clothing drive. People would always ask, like, oh, can we do like hats and shirts? And we said, no, just jeans, because there's something so simple and specific. And the more specific you get, the more people can grab onto something. So I think specificity is so important in social change campaigns. And then the second thing was, we wanted to partner with a clothing retailer, and I literally dialed for dollars. I must have cold called 100+ retailers. And one of the retailers I called, they picked up the phone. It was Aeropostale, which was one of the hottest, clothing stores for teenagers at the time. They had over 1,000 locations across the country. And so we did what we did best, which was social change, but we partnered with a retailer who then had physical locations. And so we just asked young people, drop off the jeans at your local Aeropostale store, and we matched each store with a local homeless shelter. So in that way, we were able to have the scale and reach that we could never have with our little team, our team of 60 people or whatever in New York. And so I think that was another way that we made it scale, because then every time you went to the mall, you saw the ads for Teens for Jeans at the Aeropostale store. We usually partnered with a celebrity spokesperson, so we got that, advertisement out the door. And then people had fun while they're doing it. I think sometimes there's this idea that social change, you have to be a martyr, or like, ugh, that's no fun, or like holier than thou, like, ugh, I don't want someone lecturing me about what a bad person I am. And we were like, absolutely not. Like, throw a pizza party, have fun. Like, this should be a good time, or no one's gonna do it. Like, I don't want to presume that it's the same, in college or grad school now. But like when I was in school, I would do almost anything for like a free piece of pizza and a free soda. And so make it worth people's while. And then they have so much fun with friends that they get hooked.
Yeah, I'm a pizza lover, and I can tell you that me and Alvaro actually went to this Juliana at Brooklyn and Grimaldi as well. Amazing. You should definitely check
Yes.
this out. I love it. After your time leading DoSomething, you actually founded another amazing kind of like branch or organization, DoSomething Strategic, an innovative social impact consulting agency. And this one is actually interesting because besides all the social impact that you've done, you actually also worked with major brands like Nike, Microsoft, and Spotify. Could you share about a few examples of how did you work with these brands and any specific initiative that you help shape during the way?
Yeah, absolutely. So I founded DoSomething Strategic. We actually called it TMI at the time, which I think is a great name for a consulting company, but I digress. So I founded that when I was COO at DoSomething, and I kept both hats. I spent 50% of my time as COO at DoSomething, and then 50% of my time running DoSomething Strategic. And then when I became CEO, I hired a managing director for DoSomething Strategic, and it lived under DoSomething. And there was essentially three reasons for DoSomething Strategic. The first is we were being approached by these brands who would say like, "Oh my God, do something, you know so much about young people. I don't necessarily want to partner on one of your campaigns, but I would love for you to advise one of our campaigns." And we'd say like, "No, what are you talking about? Like that's mission creep. No, no, no. We do our own stuff. We don't like we don't want to say no. We want your campaign to be better, but that's not what we do." And then so number two, we saw this as an incredible earned income revenue stream for Do Something. Again, every not-for-profit needs a revenue model that scales, and this was another way that we could have additional revenue in the organization to help us grow. And so all the profits from Do Something Strategic went to fund Do Something. And over the years, I think it was over $10 million worth of profits from Do Something Strategic funneled into Do Something. The third thing, which is the reason we started it, is because every time a brand did a social change campaign and it sucked, that like looked poorly on the sector. That made people think like, oh, well, I guess volunteerism isn't a good idea. I guess it's not a good idea for us to have, parity in pay or good maternity leave or, diverse advertisements. And we said, no, 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 that is really important. You're just doing it wrong. Listen to us and we'll teach you how to do it right. And actually, one brand that we worked with, and again, it sort of speaks to the demographic of folks who are either in college or grad school, is we worked with PwC, which seems like sort of a strange person to work with. We didn't work with them on their consumer side. We actually worked with their HR department because they were hiring 12,000 recent college grads every single year. And so they wanted someone to help them with their internship program. And they had these thousands of interns who said they cared about social change, but thought that PwC's social change offerings were less than exciting. And so we came on board and we worked with them about what college students want, how to show up authentically, how can you do this in a way that increases retention. And so again, we sometimes worked with HR, sometimes marketing, sometimes on the product itself. But to your point, we got to work with companies at the highest levels, which was super fun.
Amazing. And last two questions for myself, Aria. So the first one, we often hear about CEOs that attend Davos, but you're also a young leader at the World Economic Forum. Can you share with us how young leaders engage in this conference and what was the experience like?
So I first was a global shaper with the World Economic Forum, and then in 2016, 2017, maybe I became a young global leader. And so I've attended Davos 3 times, and the first time was probably 15 years ago, and Davos has changed so much in the last 15 years. I'd say it's probably 5x the size of what it used to be because it's turned into sort of a South by Southwest where, in addition to the sort of formal programming, everyone who's badged and is invited, there's like a whole separate town that grows up around it of everyone who's excited to be there. And so, sort of at the first time I went, there was literally 40 people there under the age of 40. And it was probably 85-15 men to women who were there on an official delegation and not someone's spouse. So certainly not an eye opener. It's not what I didn't expect. But I think people sort of question, like, oh, you're so young, you're a woman, like, what are you doing here? And certainly that has changed over the years. But I will give the World Economic Forum a lot of credit because their Young Global Leader program is incredibly diverse as it relates to race, gender, et cetera. And they really try to integrate the young global leaders into the programming. So, I mean, I got to be on a panel with, oh my God, like just insane, insane people. It was the leader of Egypt. It was the head of WPP, like the most senior all men in business from across the world. And then me and my position and my point of view was critical for them. And so again, I will give them a lot of credit for platforming young people. And I also met, incredible people when I was in Davos. And it opened a lot of doors to seeing sort of what people are doing at the highest levels. And it's really important for those people to hear from young people and what are the things that are affecting their lives.
Incredible. Yeah, maybe me and Alvo will attend it one day with the bottom club, but who knows?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go. And yeah, last question is can you share with us how did the collaboration with Reid Hoffman began? I know that he was one of the investors at DoSomething, but yeah.
So Reid was on the DoSomething board of directors, and then he also was, to your point, an investor in DoSomething. So I knew Reid tangentially. I'd pitched him a bunch of times. He said yes, he invested in DoSomething, so I felt good about that. But when I was looking for my next thing, Reid was super generous. He jumped on a Zoom call and he said, let's talk through, what do you want to do? What is your dreams for the next stage in your career? And I really wasn't sure. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had this beautiful job at DoSomething. I wanted another job that was equally impactful. And I thought maybe I wanted to be a chief of staff because I was a young CEO and I thought I had a lot to learn. And Reid was a little nervous, candidly, about me taking a chief of staff role because he's like, you don't want to step back. You were a CEO before. I don't know if you want to be a chief of staff. Like, what will that look like? And he gave me a bunch of other ideas for career. And, we ended the conversation. And then I actually went on maternity leave with my third kid. And Reid sent me a text message that just said, I have a really good idea, smiley face. And I was like, what is this about? And we jumped on a Zoom and he just said, how about you be my chief of staff? He's like, the job is yours. I think you'd be fantastic. You can interview me and the team and decide, but the job is yours. And so typical amazing kind Reid, he totally sort of de-risked the job and invited me into this beautiful team that I'm on. So I was super lucky. It was the right time. His chief of staff was moving on and I was looking for my next thing. And I knew I wanted to be at the intersection of social change and technology, but also business. And I get to be like right square in the center of that with, a dose of politics thrown in.
And I can tell you that I actually listened to a few of your episodes with Reid in the Possible podcast, and I loved it. Specifically, the one with Bill Gates when he talked about all the AI and how AI could change healthcare and maybe it could solve problems that we never thought about. So amazing. And yeah, so Aria, thank you so much for answering all of my questions. I know that Alvaro here has also fascinating question to ask you. So thank you so much. And yeah, Alvaro, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Yossi. So, Eric, you've already told us a little bit about what it is to work with founder of LinkedIn, which is the platform where we actually started this podcast, and that's why we're so happy with it. And now, for me, it's really interesting because I see a lot of parallels for when social media started. Facebook, now there's games, which is great. Maybe farm will come back, but what is the best lesson that you've learned from Reid Hoffman when you working with him? You told us a little bit about him, but what would strike you as the most important thing?
Oh my goodness. So I learn lessons from Reid every single day. Truly, it's a joy to work with him because he has so much compassion and empathy, but is also so strategic when it comes to business. So I will not give the best. I will because there are too many. But one thing that I think is really wonderful about Reid is that he really understands that everyone wants to be the hero of their own story. So we'll come out of a meeting and I'll be frustrated about something or I can't believe they did that. And he'll say, Aria, no, you just got to understand their motivation, understand where they're coming from. Like he really understands people's psychology. And it's like, how can we give them a win that's also an enormous win for us? And it's like, of course you want to search for win-win. And I think because Reid is such a student of people, that he really understands that. And he never lets his emotions get in the way of anything. Like he's always making the most rational and most strategic decision, which I really appreciate. And the other thing I'll say is that LinkedIn was no accident. Reid thinks about things in such a networked way. So, Reid gets speaking invitations all the time. And it's like, oh, Reid, you can't go to this event. It's like, no, I can't. But don't just say no. Think about who else in our network that would really benefit from that. Oh, we just invested in this NGO. Oh, their CEO. We should get them professional development, or we should get them speaking opportunities, or we should get them. It's like, how do you lift up the entire network around you? Like, Reid truly believes that life is a team sport. And so it's been really wonderful having a front row seat at how he sort of lives and breathes the ethos of LinkedIn.
Okay, and you've been with him living and breathing, but now what about the podcast? How did this story start?
literally my first day on the job, Reid said, okay, one of the things you're going to oversee in addition to everything I'm already doing is I want to create this new podcast. And the working title was What Could Possibly Go Right, which was come up with by my coworker, Greg, who actually eventually co-wrote Super Agency with Reid. And he said, you got to create that podcast. So I hired a beautiful sort of writer, content creator named Sean to help create the podcast. And we were talking to Reid, like, and going through ideas about who his co-host would be. And Reid just looked at me and he said, Aria, I thought you were going to be the co-host. And I was shocked. I was co-creating this podcast, but I didn't think I'd be the co-host. And he said, the number one criteria you have for a podcast co-host is someone who can disagree with me. And Aria, you disagree with me all the time. And so I just laughed because I was like, I'm either getting fired or promoted. Like, I don't know if it's a good thing that I disagree with my boss all the time, but again, sort of more credence to Reid that I do disagree with him a lot, and he's okay with it. He wants it. He wants someone who disagrees with him, who pushes back. And so he said, why don't you try it? And it's just been so fun. I feel so lucky, so privileged to team up with Reid on the pod.
Okay, so aside from disagreeing with the other co-host, what is a good advice that you would give us as podcasters?
Oh man. Well, you're already doing so much of it because number one is have great guests. No, I just say think about your listeners. When we think about possible, like we have several different audiences and some of them are very tech forward. And we want to give the folks who are tech forward a little dose of, humanity and social change and social justice. And we have other folks who are really sort of nonprofit leaders. And we want to show those folks the sort of beautiful tech side of things and everything that's happening in the technology world. So I would really think about who your listeners are and sort of listen to the feedback. Like I do get like dozens of notes on LinkedIn all the time from people who listen to the podcast and have things to say or disagree with. And it's just such a delight to be able to have a conversation, not just with our podcast guests, but also the broader public.
And that's regarding feedback and the public and what they say, but you yourself, you must have your particular interest and you must have a favorite episode. So would you tell us which one that would be and why?
Again, you can't choose favorites. That's like choosing your favorite child.
Exactly.
But I will say, so you mentioned Bill Gates and talking to Bill Gates, like literally one of the richest people in the world. He could spend his time on anything. His encyclopedic knowledge of global disease burden and what is happening in sub-Saharan Africa. I mean, it's truly impressive and amazing. And so that was a great episode. But I will just say that the good thing about the pod is that every episode that comes out, I can say that was my favorite episode, and it can be true because in my mind, they keep getting better and better. So I will shout out for anyone who's listening, the Possible Podcast. The last two episodes we had with Demis Hassabis and Derek Thompson were two of my favorites. I mean, Demis in particular, again, the privilege to sit down with a Nobel Prize winner who is both so brilliant, but also so brilliant at explaining what he's talking about to a lay audience. And then to realize that he has dedicated his life to science and scientific discovery, and his aim is to cure all disease in the next 10 to 15 years. It's like, how can you not be excited about AI when we have one of the most brilliant minds in the world working on curing disease that afflicts so many? So anyway, I would definitely listen to Demis Hassabis or Derek Thompson talking abundance was also a joy.
That's actually a great segue to the next section because I wanted to talk a little bit about AI. And I've noticed that a lot of your episodes do touch at some point or the other the subject, which is everybody's talking about right now. And you do talk about AI and the tech trends that are coming into the future. If you had to take a guess, because you already have a lot of knowledge about what people have told you that they think, where do you think we are within this AI revolution?
I mean, whatever analogy you want, we're on the 1 yard line, we're in the first inning, we're in the first quarter. I think if AI development stopped today, if we didn't get any better, we would have the next 20 years of AI advancement just figuring out what are the use cases. We haven't deployed it in so many ways. We haven't had it transcribe every doctor-patient visit. We haven't had it take all the data from every doctor-patient visit and then figure out how to do a sort of de facto clinical trial with everything that's happening. Like, there's just so many things that we could do if it stopped today. And yet it's not stopping today. Obviously, the pace is going to continue. And, you saw a year ago, people were like, oh, it's taking a while for GPT-5 to come out. Like, is there not enough data in the world? Like, synthetic data is not covering it. You always have the naysayers. And then OpenAI comes out with deep research or memory or voice or any of these new things. So I don't think development is going to slow down anytime soon, which is why I think we're at the very, very, very beginning. And just as importantly, one of the things that I thought was so key about Derek Thompson and Ezra Klein's book Abundance is that it's not always the invention that's critical. When we invented penicillin, it wasn't used. We couldn't mass produce it. So much of it depends on the regulatory system and the systems that is taking this invention and scaling it. And that's obviously something that Reid cares deeply about, which is scale. So just the scientific invention doesn't get us there. We have to figure out how to scale it and how to deploy it. And so that's something that I'm really interested in over the next few years. How do we scale this and how do we deploy it in a way that actually helps humanity, as opposed to a science that had potential but isn't realizing that potential?
Okay, and maybe a little bit of a hard follow-up question, but all right, we see a lot of potential in a lot of verticals. Where do you think that AI is going to have a bigger of an influence?
So I don't have any special knowledge. I'm pretty boring on this one. I do think that healthcare and health in general and education are the two biggest places. So I mean, first of all, when you think about having a tutor, it's like, oh yeah, we all know a tutor's good. Rich people in the US have tutors. But if you actually look at the data, a tutor can improve people to standard deviations. So it can essentially take the bottom of learners and move them into the middle. And it can take the middle and move them to the very top of the curve. So that is an incredible innovation and intervention. And AI is going to be so good at customization and talking to you. It remembers you. It knows where you were. It remembers that you love baseball. So it gives you baseball problems. It can be empathetic. Like, it can really be that tutor in a way that, we wanted MOOCs and we wanted online education to do, but it just fell short because it didn't have the personalization. So I think education could be huge. And I'm really excited in particular, obviously, about the developing world. And then healthcare, like I said, whether it's curing disease burden or whether it's just taking the 40% of time that doctors and scientists spend on data and paperwork and whatever, and alleviating that burden, or giving people better bedside manner because AI can send messages to patients that have actually shown to be, a non-trivial amount better than doctors. Like, there's just so much potential. And so I'd say those two fields are where I'm most excited.
All right, we also have to take a look at some of the risks and in particular in bias in AI and how we train our systems. So how do you think, also related to your background, that we can do this so that it serves everyone in a more equitable way, right? And fairly.
Listen, I don't want to be blind to the pitfalls. If I had to choose, though, the thing that I'm most worried about, it actually wouldn't be bias. It would be job loss. Like, I think the transition with AI and the job loss that could occur during that transitionary period is scary. And I think we're going to need sort of government intervention and help to help us weather it. But as it relates to bias, I don't think it should be forgotten, but I think we should think about how you can turn a bug into a feature. So, for instance, a few years ago, Amazon used AI to train a hiring system. And they found that, trained by AI, their hiring system would systematically sort out women. And so people freaked out and said, how can we have the system that sorts out women? This is impossible. The AI was just trained on Amazon hiring data. So it means that Amazon had been discriminating against women for years. And this AI was how we were able to find out about it. And so if you just have a system without AI and it's just people, biases creep in and they're really hard to fix. But if you actually have an AI system and then you can track it and you can look at it and you can figure out, oh, why does it discriminate against women? Oh, actually, it's because women haven't been hired because people thought 30-year-old women would have kids and they didn't want them going on maternity leave. Okay. Or like, oh, I see, it's women in these geographies or whatever it might be. You can actually update the AI to be less discriminatory. So I don't want to say I don't worry about bias. I do. I know there's a lot of bias out there, and bias in systems is a really big worry because you don't want to bake it in and you don't want people to just like, oh, I trust it because it's technology. But I also do think there is an opportunity to interrogate the enormous amount of bias and discrimination that exists right in the world right now when so many people think our world is a meritocracy. I believe it's absolutely not. And I think AI can actually show some of that bias plainly in a way that you can't if you don't have AI.
That's also then ending the serious questions with a good thing, which is that there is a lot of hope. And now for the hardest part of the interview, which are your personal and fun questions. So
Oh God.
you've talked to a bunch of very interesting people on your podcast, and you've also are someone that started a podcast, the business. You've made it all the way up to direct one of these businesses. So if you had one advice for entrepreneurs, what would it be?
One advice for entrepreneurs. I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are fearless. And so I don't necessarily need to give them that advice, but I do think that for certain people, the imposter syndrome just nags at them. And it's like, you know what? You are doing something. So many people out there aren't willing to take the risk, take the jump, make the. So the only way we're going to improve the future is if we improve the future. And so I would just say go for it, stop worrying about it. And it's just really an exciting thing when we see people taking their own individual agency into their own hands and improving the future. So I'm in awe of everyone who starts out on those journeys.
Okay. And aside from work, you must have something that you like to do on the side. Any hobbies?
So I have 3 kids under 10, so it is a little hard to have hobbies, and this is the lamest hobby ever. But my best friend just introduced me to Orange Theory, and I am sort of obsessed. So that is my new hobby for the moment, is Orange Theory and hanging out with my kids.
All right. And aside from your kids and your day-to-day job, you must have a way also of keeping yourself motivated to do new things, to go back to the office, to generate ideas. So what keeps you motivated?
I'm not someone who sort of needs to be kept motivated. I sort of have a natural inclination, but I'd say above all, surround yourself with good people. Surround yourself with people who are excited and want to do, and also like love you for who you are. Like I am definitely a certain kind of person, and some people love me, so I'm going to surround myself with those kind of people. So truly finding your people, hanging out with people who give you energy, who pump you up, like that is what you need to be exciting. I had a lunch yesterday with Allie Miller, who's like a legend in the AI space. She's such a delight, and just chatting with her for an hour, I'm like, oh my God, we can take over the world. Here's what we can do, this thing and this thing and this thing. So for me, it's always people. People is what pumps me up, what gets me motivated, what gets me excited. And so that's what I always need to sort of to recharge. I guess I'm an ultimate extrovert.
You gave us a lot of great answers, and I have one more question, but I'm not sure if it makes sense at all at now, which is if you weren't working at this and you could do anything else in your life, what would it be?
So I'm really obsessed with the idea of employee ownership of ESOPs. And I was listening, and I forget his name now, the guy from KKR who's been talking about ESOPs a lot. So I think if I wasn't doing what I'm doing now, I would probably be working in either the criminal justice reform space, which I'm really passionate about, or sort of the employee ownership ESOP space, because I think that's a super interesting space as well. And I just think there's enormous potential for capital to do good. It's like a little while ago, Goldman Sachs was doing making sure that prisons are well run. It's like if we can have people make money off super well run prisons, I am all about it. I want people to get filthy rich from making the world better for other people. And so I just think there's ways that we can use capital. There must be something in between VC 100x, 1000x return and philanthropy, which is a negative 100% return. There must be like a 5% return, an 8% return, a negative 5% return. That's way better than negative 100. So I just think ways we can use capital better could solve a lot of social ills, and I think we could do so within the confines of the market.
Definitely, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. And Aria, it's been great having you. Thank you so much. Yossi, back to you.
Yes, so Aria, thank you so much again for answering my email. It's been a pleasure, and we learned so much from you. Definitely different from all of the other episodes that we had so far.
Sure.
So we appreciate you very much, and for trusting us, and for everybody else in the audience. So stay tuned. We have amazing episodes for you, from NVIDIA CTO to the founder and CEOs of Sierra, Island, Redis, and bunch of other fascinating companies. So Aria, thank you so much again.
Such a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys both.
Thank you. Bye.